Now, nobody wakes up one morning and says, you know what? Today is the day. I think I'll betray everything that I've ever stood for my whole life. Yeah, it's not how it works, people. It happens very slowly, one small compromise at a time. You laugh at a joke you didn't actually think was funny, or you nod in agreement to something that you don't truly agree with. Or better yet, you stay silent when you know that you should have probably spoken up. And at first, these small compromises, well, they seem harmless. No harm, no foul. But just know that each time you give in, you chip away at who you really are. Until one day, you're going to take a look in that mirror and you're not even going to recognize yourself anymore. And that's exactly how people lose themselves. It's not all at once, but rather piece by piece. And here's what makes this even more dangerous. It's that the world actually rewards this type of surrender behavior. Well, just stop and think about it. At work, it's the yes men who tend to get promoted, while those who speak up, well, they get blacklisted. And in society, those who choose to comply are often celebrated, while the critics, well, we know they get silenced. And even in the realm of the friendship dynamic, you either go along with the group or you risk being ostracized. So naturally, most people are going to choose peace over truth, not even fully realizing that peace built on lies, well, it's not really peace. It's more like quiet destruction. And I want you to consider something very important. Every time a good person chooses to stay silent, well, someone else gains that power. This happens because silence is never neutral. It's always a transaction of give and take. And your integrity is the currency. So stop and think about it. At work, who profits from unethical decisions? And in society, who stays in control when injustices go unchallenged? And even in friendships, who wins when manipulation goes unchecked? Well, I can tell you in all of these scenarios, it's never the person with integrity who benefits. It always has been and always will be the person who is willing to exploit those too afraid to stand up or speak up for themselves. And here's where it gets deeper, people. This is exactly how cults operate. They don't demand your total loyalty overnight. They break you down slowly. It starts off with small tests of obedience. Any questioning of the leader or of the group or of the message, well, it's framed as negativity or betrayal. And then they create this whole us versus them mentality where leaving the group or thinking about leaving the group feels like losing your identity or losing everything. And before you know it, you stop trusting your own judgment. And not because they forced you, because they didn't, but because they made you afraid to think for yourself. And before you even realize what's happening, you've abandoned your own moral compass. Not because you intended to, but because with each tiny compromise, it just felt easier than standing alone. And that's what moral surrender really is. It's not so much an event, it's more of a process. So when you decide to stay silent and surrender your principles just to keep the peace, well, you allow those manipulators, whether they're individuals, groups, or systems, to tighten their grip and increase their power. So ask yourself honestly, whose game are you playing? Or are you being played? Because one of the hardest things that you'll ever have to do in this life, family, is to stand firm when it would be so much easier to just bend the knee. But remember this, if you don't stand for something, well, you'll fall for anything. Now, here are some ways that you can stop that downward spiral of moral surrender and get clear on your core values. Most people never take the time to clearly define their principles. They just tend to go along with the flow. But if you don't define your values for yourself, well, trust and believe, the world will most definitely define them for you. So take the time to figure out what matters most to you, what you refuse to tolerate, and more importantly, where your line in the sand is drawn. And once you know where these boundaries lie, well, stand firm and never, ever compromise on them. And accept that discomfort is just the price of having integrity, and that emotional stress, well, it just comes along with the territory, people. And understand too that you will lose people by deciding to stand firm. And you'll make a lot of other people very uncomfortable. But I can promise you this, you will gain something far more valuable than fake friends or fair weather associates. And that, people, that's your self respect. Because at the end of the day, if you can't live with your choices well, what does it matter if the world approves of them? And learn to speak up for yourself, even when you're afraid. Because courage, it isn't about being fearless, and it never has been. That's just a lie that we've been handed. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's speaking up despite it. And know too that the right path is rarely the easy one. But history has proven to us time and time again that change can only happen when good people refuse to stay silent. And always remember these powerful words from the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu. If you are neutral in the situation of injustice, you have already chosen the side of the oppressor. And so now I want you to reflect on some things, family. Where in your life have you been surrendering without even realizing it? And have you ever bitten your tongue when in your heart you knew that you should have spoken up? And have you ever gone along with something just to keep the peace, even when it felt wrong to you inside? Or have you ever woke up thinking, I am not proud of the person that I've become? And if any of this resonates with you, well, just know you're not alone. But now that you're armed with a much clearer picture of what's really happening, and more importantly, what you can do to combat it, you do now have a choice to make. So, will you continue to surrender your values, or will you finally stand up, conquer your fear, and reclaim your power? Well, the choice is yours. So, where do we go from here, family? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. I genuinely want to hear from you guys on this one. And if this conversation hit home, do me a big favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear this message. And thank you for pulling up a chair with me today, Circle. You know that you're always welcome here. And as always, I'm stay strong, stay true, and never let this world steal your voice. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.